Hey guys, I hope you are having an amazing break. I don't know if you're on break. I'm on break, so obviously I'm over the moon. Regardless, today we are going to be talking about how to make original characters. Let's get into it. So original characters are exactly what they sound like, characters that you yourself create. I'm going to be talking about them more in a sort of roleplay or LARPing sense, but you could use this for anything. For just a look, if you want to do a basic cosplay of a character, for an RPG, for a LARP, for a book that you're writing, art, anything. So when I'm making an original character, first I'm thinking about why I'm making that character. Am I going to play a D&D game? Am I going to a LARP? Am I just writing a story? In the case of the first two, there might be some more specific rules or things that you need to keep in mind when you're creating your character. So for example, if you're playing in a medieval setting, your character probably cannot be a robot from the future, unless that's something your game master is allowing, in which case go nuts. If you're doing a piece of your own original work entirely, obviously the only limits are your imagination. But I would like to work with something that's more in the constraints of a universe, just because going from an entirely original basis in this video I think would be a little bit too overwhelming, because then we need to talk about how to create setting and plot and things like that, which is a lot to go into for one video. If you would like a video in the future about how I wrote my novel and how I came up with those ideas, please let me know and I would be happy to do that as well. So I'm going to give the example of a D&D character mainly because there are so many examples out there, and because the game gives you such set rules that I think it's a little bit less overwhelming to make if this is the first time you ever made an original character. For those of you who don't know, D&D is Dungeons & Dragons, a role-playing game, and it has been around for a long time, so there are rule books with what exactly your character needs to have and then what you can fill in yourself. The rules generally involve picking a race, which is a species of a character, and a class. Races are usually a bit more flexible than classes, I would say, in terms of what you're able to make. Your game master or dungeon master might just have to tweak the stats a little bit, but today we're just talking about a purely creative standpoint. And in D&D, there are a ton of races to choose from. A little bit less on the class side, but really you have a lot of options, so don't feel like your creativity is being stifled just because you're going from a pre-approved list of things to choose from. Besides those two aspects, everything about your character comes from your own head and your own creativity, so the sky's really the limit. There are two ways to go about creating an original character when it comes to these sort of guidelines. You can start by picking from the pre-approved list, so pick a race and pick a class, and then fill in everything else. Or you might want to come up with a background for your character first and then pick a race and a class based on that background. For example, if you'd like your character to be kind of a loner who's always been shunned by society and looked at oddly, you might want to start with that and then pick a tiefling, so a half demon, half devil. Dungeons & Dragons has demons and devils, and I always get them confused, but it's one of those. Sorcerer, so someone who has magic innately. That sort of build, as we call it, would create a character that a lot of people in the society would be kind of afraid of and would kind of look oddly at, because tieflings are known to be sort of outsiders because of their demonic or devilish heritage, and sorcerers are people with magic inside of them, which gives kind of a more chaotic element. The other option, and one that I think might be a bit easier for new players or people who are new to character creation, is picking a race and class and then building your character off of that. That, I think, makes it a little bit easier to kind of conceptualize your ideas, because you're given lists and then you can say, okay, I want this and this. Now that I have those two key components, how can I expand this character? So that is what we are going to do in today's example. I should note here that if you are making a character to play for a game, you do want to think about what kind of stats that character will have. So in D&D, and I believe in a lot of role-playing systems, the race and class that you choose have specific good things and bad things about them in terms of purely gameplay aspects. So you'll want to think about that if you're going for a more tactical character build. We're not going to really reference that today because I don't feel like pulling out my DM guide, but it is a good thing to think about if you want to play and make sure your character is as good as they can possibly be from a gameplay standpoint, not necessarily a role-playing standpoint. if you don't own any of the books from Dungeons & Dragons, there is a website called D&D Beyond, which I will link down below, that has a ton of lists of possible races and classes. However, you do have to pay for some of them. So if you're not in the financial sphere, I suppose, to do that, just try Googling it. You'll find a lot of like wikis and things like that that will give you pretty much the same information, and it's free. That is very good. I'm now going to switch over to my computer to show you how exactly you could do that.
Okay, so here is my screen. We will just go over to a web browser, type in D&D classes to start with. Remember to put in the addition if you're using this guide to actually create a character for a game. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. But I will put in 5th edition just for ease. As you can see, a bunch of results come up. The first result is from D&D Beyond that I mentioned. But if you would like to use a different resource, something like Roll20 is great. So we'll just click there, and it will show you all of the main classes. There are things such as subclasses and whatnot, but I think we'll just stick to the main ones here for ease. So you can click on different classes, and they will show you a little bit about each class, basically. So let's do Warlock, because that is my favorite class. Just let that load here. So this gives you everything about a warlock that you would need to know to create the character. So as you can see on the right here, it shows you hit points, proficiencies, a basic explanation about it, all of that, what kind of things you get at different levels. Again, this is more gameplay stuff. If you just want to make a character that is a warlock, I would probably toggle over here to where it just says, up here, go to Otherworldly Patron, and that explains kind of what a warlock is. So a warlock makes a deal with someone who has a lot of power in order to get magic. This is more sort of gameplay stuff. Let's see if we can scroll down here to find. One thing I will say about D&D Beyond that I like is it does give you a sort of, here I'll show you actually. If we go to D&D Beyond, it does give you little descriptions for each class. So if we go to D&D Beyond, up here, and this is, I think I mentioned, or I should have mentioned, the official site for D&D. But anyway, if we go into game rules, yes, game rules is right, isn't it? Yeah. So game rules, it'll show you all the classes. Go back over here to Warlock. It gives a nice little description up here. So all of this, can I highlight this? Maybe not, there we go. So all of this gives like a sort of general overview of what a warlock is. And then these down here give a little bit more information about maybe what a warlock would be as a character. And I guess since we're going for that more than gameplay, I'll just stay on D&D Beyond for the rest of this. So they do this for every class. So again, you'll just toggle to game rules. You can see all the classes. So let's do like a fighter, for example. And over here, we have see more nice little descriptions. I also really like the pictures. I think pictures are a great way to sort of get the idea of what you want your character to be like. It's always helpful, especially if you're a visual person. So these top few things up until the table are really a great way to build a character, as it were. They talk about background elements over here. Things like that are really helpful for roleplay. And then once you picked your class, you can go back up to the top and go into game rules again, I think. Where? Yes, races. And then you can do the sort of same thing. So races, as I said, it's kind of a misleading name because a race is really more like a species. So you can see basic pictures and very basic descriptions of the characters, and then if you were to click on them, you can get a lot more. So let's pick something like an Aasimar, click view details, and most of these are available for free. There are only a couple that you have to pay for. I guess this is one of them. so you won't do that. So if you are on D&D Beyond and you see something like this, it will tell you which book they want you to purchase in order to gain access to that particular class. But if you don't want to do that and you do want that class, just Google the class, or not class, race. So Aasimar D&D 5e. And then you could pretty easily find a similar sort of description for the character, just without all the fancy art. So D&D 5e wiki is also pretty good. So as you can see here, they have the exact description. So the thing about Aasimars being angels, sort of. Then some pretty good game features. This is something you would all need if you were going to play this character, as I said. Let's see what character races we can find that are on the official website. Probably here, let's do a human. I'm sure they'd have human for free. I'm pretty sure everything in this orange would be for free because it's a basic thing. So as you can see, they give much more descriptions about humans that would be good for roleplay. This is quite nice. They actually give descriptions from other races of what they think about the race you chose. So as you can see here, humans are everyone's second best friends. Everyone likes them, but nobody really loves them. So there's a lot of interesting background you could get here. Different ethnicities. There's also a lot of names, which can be really helpful. Speaking of names, though, once you've chosen that, your race that is, I would recommend going to Fantasy Name Generator. And it has every name that you could possibly want. So you can do Dungeons & Dragons names, angel names, elf names, plenty more if I just click on the home page here. So you can get fantasy names, real names, place names, other names, pop culture, description generators, anything. It's pretty much anything you can think of is on this website. It is amazing. It's all run by this one girl, Emily, I think, and she is amazing. Once you've picked out the basic background for your character, the race and class, it's time to start thinking about roleplay options. So if we go back to D&D Beyond, because I like the pictures, and let's say we chose, let's see here. Let's say that we chose a human barbarian. Let's do that. So you would think, okay, humans are pretty much like humans here. They're normal, they don't live that long. Everybody kind of likes them. And then barbarians, you can see, are very primal, dangerous, that sort of thing. So think about origins, like you see here. Did your barbarian come from a distant land? Are barbarians really common? Would they be seen as kind of like an outsider because they didn't grow up in a city, or is that a normal thing? Barbarians in particular usually have different paths, which I am scrolling down to. I'll just click that. Yeah. So then you can say, okay, I'm the path of a berserker, so I get enraged really easily and kill lots of people. So how did that affect your character? How did they feel bad about killing people, or is that just sort of par for the course for them, you know? How does that affect their relationship with people? You can think of a physical build for your character if you want. If you were doing a LARP, obviously that would be pretty important because that would be the main part of it. Well, at least what people would see. These as well as other questions are really important to think about when you're making a character so that you can best embody them and play them or write them as they should be. You want them to be a three-dimensional character, not just a 2D image of like caveman barbarian, you know? Did they have any past romantic relationships? Did they have a family? Did they have children? Did they lose anyone in particular? What motivates them? It also might be helpful to pick a single trait and then amplify your character around that. So maybe your barbarian's mom died when she was young. How did that affect her upbringing? How did that affect her path as a barbarian? Was her mom a barbarian too? Does she want to emulate her mother, or is she trying to be the opposite of her mother? Maybe her mother was a very civilized lady and she always felt she could never compare to that, so she just went in a completely opposite direction. Once you have the basics of your character, so one trait and then race and class, or something similar, we could also just say species and job if you're not doing a D&D build, then you can start really fleshing out your character into a three-dimensional person.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had fun creating your character with me. And if you end up creating a character from this video and use them for a game or for a piece of original work, tell me all about it. I would love to hear it. If you make art of them, please show me. And even if you don't, I hope you had fun. I hope you're having a great day, night, weekend, whatever, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.